Hi, I'm Kyle Randolph. I'm a technical specialist here at JumpCloud in Boulder. Welcome to our onboarding video series. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about installing JumpCloud's AD Bridge. To begin, what is the AD Bridge? Effectively, AD Bridge is a tool that allows organizations to continue using Microsoft Active Directory as their authoritative source over identities, while extending it to systems, apps, and protocols that are not natively managed by AD. To begin this video, I want to first cover some prerequisites before we get underway. Installing the AD Bridge agent on your domain controllers will require a little bit of downtime, as the installation does require a reboot. In addition, you will need to ensure that you have a single Active Directory domain name across your domain controllers. Further, the JumpCloud agent does require internet connectivity and the creation of an AD user with read all user information permissions. And finally, we'll be providing the JumpCloud API Key, which is leveraged to link the AD Bridge agent to your org. So to expand on this, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be creating a read all user that allows the AD Bridge agent to pull user information from AD into JumpCloud. Further, we'll be downloading and installing the AD Bridge agent on your domain controller or domain controllers if you have multiple DCs in your environment. Once the domain controller is successfully set up with the JumpCloud agent installed, we'll continue to create two security groups that will allow for user and group synchronization from your domain controller into JumpCloud. Let's begin. So I have the JumpCloud console open. Now this is a new tenant. I don't have any users, systems, or other resources created. So what we're going to do is we're going to segue to my domain controller that I have set up here. We'll minimize this window for now. And we'll take a look at a few things. First off, in the users and computers section of my domain controller, I have a variety of users and groups. So to begin the process of getting the AD Bridge agent working on this machine, what I need to do is we're going to create a new user. This user is going to be our read all user that will have the ability to read all user information on the domain controller to then effectively replicate that over into JumpCloud. So I'll create the user read all with a username aptly called read all. We will continue to specify the user's password and disable user must change password at next logon and finish. Now with our read all user created, we'll want to continue to delegate control to this user, effectively escalating them so that they have the ability to read all user information. So we'll open the delegation control wizard. We'll continue forward, selecting next, and now we'll add our newly created read all user. Now it's important to note at this point, while I chose to label my user read all, you can effectively choose to name this user whatever you'd like, though it is important to maintain that this account is a service account. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but one username you do not want to choose for this user is JumpCloud. So we'll go ahead and cover that a little bit deeper further on, but for now we have our user selected and we'll proceed next. Now, under the delegate the following common tasks, we'll proceed to select read all user information. With this selected, we'll choose next and finish. Now that the read all user has the proper permissions on this domain controller, we're going to navigate back to the JumpCloud console and we're going to install the agent on this machine. We'll select directories, Active Directory Bridge, and in the Active Directory Bridge aside, we can see that we have our download AD Bridge agent as well as our API key that will be prompted to enter. I'm going to preemptively copy the key and proceed to download AD Bridge agent. We'll continue to run this file and install our dependencies. Choosing our distinguished name. In this case, my organization is configured as demojumpcloud.com, so we'll enter dc equals demojumpcloud, semicolon, dc equals com, and proceed. Now, we'll want to actually specify our read all user and their corresponding password. And finally, this is where we will enter our API key that we copied earlier and proceed to complete the installation. Now, as you'll note in our setup wizard, we do actually require that the domain controller restart to complete the installation process. So as I noted earlier, you'll want to schedule some downtime to plan for this accordingly. Since we've already prepared for this, we'll continue to finish and restart our domain controller. To ensure that the new AD Bridge agent is successfully running on this machine endpoint, let's sign back into JumpCloud and take a look at our directories section. As we can see, we have a new section in our aside titled Active Directory. Further to this, I can see new information being presented for our new domain controller that has the AD Bridge agent installed. So let's navigate back over to our server manager and further Active Directory users and computers to complete the configuration process. If I pull open my demojumpcloud.com OU, we'll expand out users, and now we'll create two new groups in the users OU. It is important to note at this point that the two security groups we're going to create must exist in the default users OU. The first one we will create is going to be a new group titled JumpCloud. In this case, you do need to pay particular attention to the group name, and it must be titled exactly JumpCloud. So we'll continue with creating this group. And now we will continue to create our second group of JumpCloud admins. We do want to ensure the group scope is global and the group type is a security group. Now let's take a look and talk a little bit further about what these two groups are and what they are doing as it relates to the synchronization process of users and groups from Active Directory into JumpCloud. The core JumpCloud group is going to be used for replicating both users and groups into the JumpCloud console. Any user or group that you would like to have replicated over must exist in JumpCloud. The JumpCloud admins group, however, is a supplemental group that is optional, and what this group effectively allows for is the escalation for a user to become a global admin. Effectively, this is applying for most frequently system administrators that whenever they're associated to a system in JumpCloud's platform, they are granted sudo or administrator privileges. Now, to recap, we've created our read all user, installed the AD Bridge agent, and created two security groups to allow user replication from AD into JumpCloud. To see this process in action, please follow the link below to see users and groups being built in JumpCloud and subsequently associated with a variety of resources in our platform. Thank you. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, please navigate to our knowledge base at support.jumpcloud.com, or if you'd like to speak to a member of our team about our platform, please email us at customersuccess@jumpcloud.com. Otherwise, subscribe below to stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you.